gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? The show starts in 3, 2, 1, go.
Good morning, CaneSport. It's the 13th of August, 2024. I'm Gary Ferman, the publisher of CaneSport.com, and today we are talking about the news of the day. But we're going to have a little bit of a different type of show this morning. We've let Matt Shodell sleep in. We're going to bring on a young guy that's part of the On3 network who, in my opinion, really is one of the rising voices in college football. He's had his breakthrough. He has the daily platform and really puts an enormous amount of time and effort into his craft, and that is JD Pickell. And JD is really bullish on the Miami Hurricanes, has been as vocal as anybody on the national stage. Let me play a little bit to set the stage of what JD has had to say about the Miami Hurricanes.
We got the Miami Hurricanes. In Miami, their over-under win total in Vegas is at 9.5. Vegas is telling you, hey, we're expecting something this year. Mario Cristobal, the way they've trended over the course of the last couple of seasons, 5-7, 7-5. Do they pop in year 3 of the Cristobal regime? Miami Hurricane fans, exciting year in Coral Gables, baby. Exciting, exciting year. Big season ahead. Cam Ward, Mario Cristobal, a roster that I think is as good as it's ever been in Coral Gables under Mario Cristobal. I think the good folks in Coral Gables are like, this is the year to show us something. We've waited patiently. We've been told to let the process run its course and let Cristobal get his guys in there. And then you just kind of throw in the grenade of, oh, by the way, we got Cam Ward, one of the best quarterbacks in college football now, running the show for us. This was the team that you were told about when Mario Cristobal first got the job at Miami. Like this is how the roster was supposed to look, that you were told how it would look eventually. Line of scrimmage, it's there. Francis Mauanoa, I mean, I think that defensive backs watch him on tape and what they do on the screens and the reverses when he gets out in space, he is a highlight. He's a highlight on the offensive line. Let that sink in. Skill players, it's there. Sam Brown from Houston, got speed to burn. Xavier Restrepo, you know what you get with him, and a proven commodity. JoJo Trader they're excited about. Jacoby George they're excited about, obviously, what he did last year at Miami. And you got the quarterback. That's the difference maker for you. You got the quarterback to set this whole thing off and make it work. So this is your window, all right? This is the moment here, if you're Miami, to go get what you want to go get.
So here he is, the man himself, JD Pickell. If you guys have not been following him on the On3 channels on YouTube, make sure you do right now. This guy is as dialed into what's going on in college football as anybody. He puts the time in, he does his homework, and you will get incredible insight from JD. So I encourage everybody to give him a look every single day on YouTube and on the On3 channels. JD, there is nobody, okay, on the national stage that's a pundit or whatever label you want to put on it that has been more bullish on the Miami Hurricanes going into this season than yourself. You have been very transparent in your glowing praise of Cam Ward. You have been very positive about the roster changes that you've seen take place in Miami. You like Miami's prospects for the season. You have predicted them to win the ACC and make the college football playoff. So let's start right there before we get into some of the specifics. Why are you so bullish? Why are you buying Miami stock going into the season?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of reasons that you kind of alluded to there. Like the roster now in year 3, I think if you are a Miami fan, this is the roster that you signed up for when Mario Cristobal first took the job, because that was kind of the headline, right? Like he's going to recruit better, he's going to bring in more top talent. Then that first year happened, and first year was the first year. The second year happened, you see a leap from that first year to the second year. But now in that third year, it's like, all right, Mario Cristobal, I believe at least, can confidently sign his name off on this roster to being a Mario Cristobal roster. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to be as good as it's going to be in the future. It doesn't mean there's not still some areas that he wants to tinker with. But I think for the most part, this is a outfit that he feels, I'm not speaking for him here, but I would believe that he feels is a lot closer to what he expects in Coral Gables. And then the other part too, like we said on our show a lot, if you got a quarterback, you got a chance. And they have more than a puncher's chance anytime Cam Ward is under center. So I'm excited to see it. I love all the pieces. There's not a whole lot of weaknesses on paper as we sit here right now in August, but yeah, extremely bullish on the Canes for all those reasons.
All right, so Cam Ward, he comes in the transfer portal, hasn't taken a snap yet for Miami. They've already proclaimed him the ACC Player of the Year by the voting of, I guess, all the media that covers the ACC. This kid has so many expectations on his shoulder, considering that he's coming from an average Washington State program where, you know, they were about a 500 team. He wasn't able to really showcase his abilities because he didn't have the talent around him that he hopefully is going to have this season at Miami. Are people getting ahead of themselves with Cam Ward, or is the hype justified?
Yeah, I think it's in August, we're all getting ahead of ourselves. Like, if you can't get ahead of yourself in August, like, what are we doing here? Like, you can't take the Kool-Aid with you into October and November, so guzzle it while you can. But at the exact same time, like, I think there's a lot of merit to buy the Cam Ward hype and to buy stock in him. Obviously, Washington State and Miami are going to be different offenses to a degree and different competition level, but you know, everybody's eyes work just fine when they watch Cam Ward play football. And the things that he does at Washington State, I wholeheartedly believe physically will translate to Miami's offense. And kind of to allude to what you said as well, Gary, like, he has more talent around him now at Miami. I think he has a more capable offensive coordinator in a Shannon Dawson. And so all those things combined to make me excited about Cam Ward. But the thing that I think maybe is the most encouraging, if I'm a Miami Hurricane fan, is the way that Cam Ward is talked about when it comes to his intangibles. Like, the word you hear a lot with him, and Gary, I think you've mentioned this as well, like, guy's an alpha. Guy is a leader. Guy has an attitude, a swagger about him. And not to throw shade at previous Miami teams the last couple of seasons, but I think they've maybe been missing that a little bit at the quarterback position, you know, to have a guy who's not just your quarterback, but also the guy and who can kind of set that temperature for your locker room and instills belief into the rest of the roster. I think that's a little bit cliche, but it's massively, massively impactful, and you got to have it to win at the highest level. So all those things to me make me feel like Cam Ward is built for it this year.
You know, I was a Tyler Van Dyke believer for a long time. You know, I thought he started out his career at Miami great, but there were so many things that went into his nosedive in Coral Gables. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens with him at Wisconsin. I know there's a competition there. I have sources who have told me that they expect Tyler Van Dyke to start the season as the starting quarterback, and they will see where it goes from there. So that's going to be very interesting to watch. And then, you know, but a lot of guys go in the transfer portal and they just change teams and they don't get residual benefits. You cover it every day. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Cam Ward changed teams and has now surrounded himself with a better situation. And if you're a guy that's hoping to impress the NFL scouts, as Cam Ward is, I got to think that this decision to go to Miami, where they needed a quarterback, where they have been amping up the roster, where they bring in a Damian Martinez, a Sam Brown, and they already had some decent skill players, Arroyo and Jacoby George and Restrepo, to go along with all that. For a freshman JoJo Trader coming in, they've got guys that Cam Ward can excel with, and that's got to be a really, really big deal. So I'm with you. You know, I got these orange and green colored shades that I whip out on the show from time to time. You make me put them on because you are, like I said, as fired up about Miami as anybody else. But now that comes with pressure, JD. I mean, you know, year 3 of Mario, this is what he came to Miami for. This is his life. Nobody in college football works harder than him. 18-hour days, year round. Nobody recruits harder than him. This is a show me time for Miami. Listen, they've got guys like you on board. It starts out, very quickly on August 31st. Before I get into the specific game, your thoughts from the outside looking in on the perspective of Mario Cristobal going into year 3 at Miami.
I think you hit it on the head. Like, it is a show me year. You know, like, you can kind of talk yourself into why year 1 and year 2 don't have the bottom line results that you would like to have, but by year 3 and getting a quarterback like a Cam Ward, it's kind of like like Uncle Ben in Spider-Man. Like, with great power comes great responsibility. With a great quarterback, with a great roster, and with a winnable conference comes great expectations. And so if they don't reach their potential this upcoming season, I think there will be a tremendous level of regret that you didn't maximize the 1 year you had with Cam Ward, and it becomes a lot more difficult to pitch the future of Miami. So that's not to get too doom and gloom on what, could go wrong for the Canes, but I do think it's fair to say that if they're able to win at a high level, like just as much as it could, kind of dampen the party if they don't win at a high level. If they win at a high level, like that pours gasoline on what Miami is going forward, that pours gasoline on what they're doing on the recruiting trail, provides more proof of concept to what they can do through the portal. So there's all these things that I think are kind of hanging in the balance of a year 3 team in Miami. And you and I are on the same page, and I think they're going to get it done.
All right. So it starts in Gainesville. And I mentioned, you've predicted Miami to win the ACC. You've predicted them to go to the college football playoff. You did not predict them to win in Gainesville on August 31st, which is going to give everybody a heart attack. Now that I'm mentioning it, I'm sorry, Canes fans. But let me first, before we talk about it, play what JD had to say about the Miami-Florida game.
First game of the year. Going to the swamp, baby. Going to the swamp. And we've said it for a long time, man. Florida, they are a lot better than most people would lead you to believe. I think Miami is going to be one of the best teams in college football this year. Spoiler, I do. However, this game being played in the swamp, Cam Ward's first start in game action, it's tricky. Very, very tricky. If this game was played at a neutral site, I think I'd pick Miami. However, it's played in the swamp. This is a team in Florida that has heard a lot about what they won't accomplish, how they're going to fall flat on their face, their coach is going to get fired, their schedule's so tough. I think that Miami actually drops the first game in the swamp.
All right, Canes fans, we're going to give you a 5-second moment of silence to resuscitate yourselves. Okay. Right. There's no game in the history of the University of Miami football program that has meant more, even Florida State, believe it or not, if you go way back to the golden days of Miami football, that has meant more to longtime Miami fans than playing the Gators. And the Gators, quite honestly, have chickened out over the last couple of decades. They'll only play every now and then. This is a home and home that was scheduled many, many years ago. Miami will schedule the Gators anytime the Gators want to play. It's that significant a game in the state of Florida. It's that significant of a rivalry for Miami. Okay, so this is everything on August 31st for the Hurricanes. Now, all this hype that's been going on, Cam Ward, the roster and everything, has led a lot of people to believe that this is going to be a walk in the park going up to the swamp on August 31st. And I could keep pounding the message boards and telling you this is not likely to be a walk in the park. You're still going to play a decent SEC team. Yes, they have a brutal schedule. Yes, they may not win half their games. Yes, Billy Napier might get fired at the end of the season. But that has nothing to do with what's going to take place at Florida Field on August the 31st. And it's a season opener. You got 41 new players on the Miami roster. A lot of new players in Florida too. Not, it's certainly not an excuse. But this could be a muddy football game on the road at an SEC location where they're going to be very amped up as well. Your thoughts just on why you think this is a place where Miami is going to fall?
Yeah, I mean, if I am wrong, that'd be the first time in history I were to miss on a prediction for the good folks that are tuned in right now in Canes country. So just kind of take that as you will. I think back to the game where Utah went into the swamp, and Utah that year, I believe, won the Pac-12, played in a Rose Bowl game, and let's just call a spade a spade. Like they were a better outfit than Florida was during that season. I think Florida won 6 football games. Now, they had Anthony Richardson on that roster, which was the difference in that football game. But I think that is just like the perfect snapshot for me as to why I have a harder time getting on board with Miami winning that football game in the swamp. Not saying it couldn't happen, but with it being in Gainesville, like that's a different football team when they play at home, are the Gators. It kind of throws this who knows what the heck is going to happen ingredient into that whole game breakdown. And I just said it during that clip, like if this game was played in Atlanta, Georgia, probably pick Miami. If this game was played at Miami, probably pick Miami. But with it being in Gainesville, with all the extra variables around Florida this offseason and all the things they've heard about them from a negative point of view, like I think they'll come out with something to prove. Also, like you mentioned, all the new players, more specifically Cam Ward making his first start in one of the most difficult, if not the most difficult environment to play in all of college football. I think they dropped that game, but I do think that it'll be one where Miami will be better for having played in that environment. And again, I mean, just spoiler, I don't have them losing the game the rest of the way. So you drop the first one, Twitter goes crazy, the sky is falling for all of a week, and then Miami rolls.
Should you be right and they drop that game, it's going to be quite a challenge for Mario to pick everybody back up. I mean,
Sure.
Head coaches, I don't know how much they love these massive games to start the season because there's so much buildup, so much expectation. And if you're not successful on opening day, the sky is falling and you got to pick up the fans. You got to pick up your team. You got to pick up your coaches. They got a couple of weeks after that, regardless of what the outcome is, FAMU, Ball State. That should be obviously touchy-feely moments. A lot of guys playing, getting a chance to showcase themselves. Then they play a game that I've got circled a little bit, not because they should lose, they really shouldn't. And I know you picked them to win, but South Florida is a team with a lot of people coming back that's more capable than a lot of people think they are. And they could give Miami on the road in a game that's coming up before the gauntlet on the schedule, Virginia Tech, Louisville, Florida State. They might give Miami a little bit of a tussle that day. But I know you feel that they will prevail, as do I. Now then, okay, it gets interesting. You got that Friday night game against Virginia Tech. And Virginia Tech is a real sleeper team on this schedule. They've been loading up in Blacksburg, and they're expected to show up as a real Virginia Tech team. Let me play for everybody what you said about that night.
Virginia Tech, you get them at your place. This game makes me so nervous, so nervous, because Virginia Tech is number one in returning production. They got a Clydesdale at quarterback in Kyron Jones, who I believe Cam Ward also trains with, and it's on a Friday. I don't know. I mean, this is a scientific part about college football. If it's played on a Friday, weird things happen. Spooky things happen on Friday. Even with that being said, I think Miami wins a close one against Virginia Tech to keep the good times rolling after that 3-game win streak. They make it 4 against Virginia Tech.
So it's not Halloween. Why?
Not Halloween.
Why do spooky things happen on Friday night football?
I have no idea. I wish I could tell you, but there's something that is, like I said, scientifically proven that maybe it's the schedule, maybe it's the fact that you're playing on a day of the week you typically wouldn't. I don't know what goes into it, but weird things on Friday nights tend to happen, as we've seen throughout the course of really since they've been playing games on Friday nights. Scares me a little bit, especially with all that experience they have coming back, but the fact that it's in Coral Gables, at Miami, dials back the anxiety, I think, a little bit for me around that game if I'm a Miami fan. If it was in Blacksburg on a Friday night, I'd be like, oh boy, hey, buckle up, strap in. Like it's gonna be a dogfight. I think it's still a dogfight, but I think Miami gets out of there. And again, having to play in that kind of an uncommon circumstance, having to play on a Friday night, having to rally the troops in the game where they're gonna have a lot of buzz around them. There's gonna be a lot of storylines going into that game. I think that's gonna be massive for them and kind of propel them going forward. Backtracking really quick, whoever's putting USF's schedule together and is able to get Alabama at USF last year, is able to get Miami at USF this year, like, round of applause to them, man. Like, they deserve some sort of award for getting that schedule, getting those teams to come to USF. That's gonna be fun.
It's a good home and home schedule. It really is. Miami has traditionally liked to do it with USF because you get the appearance at least of a road game at a conference, and it's an easy trip cross state. All your fans can go there, and they're a competent team. Usually, they're not usually a great team, but they're a competent team. So it's not a bad schedule for Miami and these teams. So I think that's why you see them popping up on some of these schedules. All right, so now we get. This is where you're going to be right or wrong, where I'm going to be right or wrong. This is it, man. The moment of truth for the Hurricanes. You're at Louisville and then home against Florida State. Let me show everybody what you had to say about that.
Then you're at Louisville. Now, this game is the game before Florida State. This just screams, just shouts from the top of the mountains, trap game. Okay? We're going to do a segment, I think, in the future, too, because of this game of the top trap games in college football. This is one of them. Louisville doing what, Brom does. They're going to go and hit the portal hard. They got Tyler Shuck, who's played 97 years of college football out there for them. It's a good player now. If you don't bring your A game, you'll end up losing like Notre Dame did last year when they went to the Ville. Tough place to play. It'll be rocking. However, I think this is where we see new Miami show itself. Culture is strong. Talent level is better. More focused. I think this is the game where you say, okay, that's different. That's a different team out there. You beat Louisville in a tragic look-ahead spot. Then you play Florida State. This is going to be a game that is major for bragging rights in the state. This is going to be major for the approval rating for Mario Cristobal, obviously. I'll be real. I just don't know if Florida State can score with Miami. Not saying they can't. I think that defense is going to be great at Florida State, but I just don't know if Cam Ward is rolling how I think he's going to be rolling. Florida State can keep pace. So I think that Miami wins that game and set themselves up very nicely to finish out the season here. You got Duke, should be a dub. At Georgia Tech, you're kind of walking that tightrope now. You're making sure that you finish through the line here. That should be a dub. You finish with Wake Forest and at Syracuse. Wake Forest is a win. At Syracuse is not going to be easy money. All right, Fran Brown, Kyle McCord, they got a roster now that can give you some problems. However, I do think you win that football game.
All right, so the new Miami culture, it being tested on the road. What I think will likely be a night game if it's not on ABC, ESPN, and ACC Network will certainly want it in prime time. But I expect it to be an ESPN or ABC game at that point. Under the lights at Louisville, tough place to play. A good coach in Jeff Brom. Yeah. Very, very, very strong offense. Tyler Show, a quarterback that Mario Cristobal recruited at Oregon. Yeah. This was his quarterback of the future. Now he's got to beat him on the road at Louisville. Why does the Miami culture hold up in that environment?
That's a great question. I think the proof will ultimately be in the pudding, but I think the culture holds up because it's year 3, and that's what Cristobal teams are about. Like we say it a lot on our show. I think the persona of your leadership at some point in time over the course of a couple of seasons will eventually be the persona of your team. And I think Mario Cristobal, who he is, and you know this as well as anybody, Gary, like toughness, don't flinch, poise, attack, like all those things to me embody who he is. And I think in this moment, like that's going to be the message of this team is like, all right, if you want to be who you claim you want to be, if you want to be a team that wins the ACC and makes the college football playoff, like you handle business in games like this, games Friday night against Virginia Tech, games on the road at Louisville before Florida State. Like if you want to be who you say you are, this is the substance that we talk about trying to produce and not doing, as Mario Cristobal would say, we're not hashtagging it up. We're not sloganing it up. Like this is where you show me. This is where you show America who you're going to be. And so for that reason, I think they've put in the work behind closed doors as a staff and as a roster to get to be competitive and win games like this. And I think it eventually comes to fruition. Reminds me a lot, Gary, of Texas last year, and the conversation revolving around them was, well, yeah, that big brand gets a lot of buzz. And yeah, that, we hear every year what they're supposed to be like. And then year 3, they go win the conference, make the college football playoff in the 4-team format because of who they had at quarterback, because of what Sark had done behind closed doors to build that culture. I think that's very similar to what Miami will be in 2024 and why they'll finish the season so strong.
All right. So how good is Florida State? I know you've looked into them extensively. Yeah. How good is Florida State?
They're real good. They're real good. I think everyone's obviously asking the question around their transfer portal quarterback in DJU. They feel like, from what I understand, that is the deepest, most talented team Mike Norvell has had there. Now, at the exact same time, a lot of new faces, a lot of unproven faces in that room. It's going to be a dogfight. It's going to be a dogfight. There's no way around it when they play Miami. I mean, the emotion in itself will be tremendous and through the roof for that game. But I think that what I just said in that clip, it holds true, I think, for this game. Like, as good as Florida State is, I don't think they can score with Miami. Like if Miami goes up 7, Miami goes up 10, I don't think you're catching Cam Ward in that offense. As we sit here in August, that's how I feel about it, but I think that's going to hold true when they actually come to play the game.
All right. So Miami finishes out the schedule. They make the college football playoff, 12 teams this year. So that's going to be very interesting. Who should they be afraid of when they get there?
Ooh, good question. Who should they be afraid of when they get there? Well, spoiler, I have them winning the ACC. So I think they'll get a bye for that first round of the playoff. I think when you talk about Miami, and if, what I believe about them turns out to be true in 2024, I mean, you put them in that top tier of the college football landscape. And so you start worrying about who you worry about when you're in that neighborhood. You worry about the Ohio States. You worry about the teams that come out of the SEC, whether it be a Georgia or an Ole Miss or an Alabama or all of them alike, which I expect there to be a lot of SEC teams in this college football playoff field of 12. Spoiler alert, I know that's an uncommon opinion for folks covering the sport right now. Yeah, so I mean, I think the concern for me, if I'm Miami, is those teams with really elite depth, like an Ohio State, like a Georgia. Because for Miami, like as good as Cam Ward is, the question for me is, can the trenches go the distance? And that's not just my question for Miami. That's my question for everyone across the board, because now in a 16, 17 game season, like you're going to have the quantity of big bodies and capable bodies to be able to win when you get into late December, early January. So not a super specific answer for you there, Gary, but to put a finer point on it, the Ohio States of the world and teams like that are the ones that I would keep an eye on and the ones that I'll focus on if I'm Miami.
All right. Well, we thank you so much for your time here today. And again, everybody, this is a rising goat in our business. Okay. And I'm telling you, he puts the time in. There's many days when JD, he'll give me a call, tell me what's going on at Miami. Let's have a conversation, so that when he talks about Miami on his show, he knows what he's talking about. He's not just blowing smoke at everybody that's watching. So if you carve out a little time in your day, get on over to the On3 channel and find JD Pickell. You will not be sorry. We hope you are right. Maybe we'll check in with you as the season goes on and see how things are going. But again, thank you for making the time for us today. And obviously, wish you the best in all your prognostications as this college football season begins.
Man, always a pleasure, Gary. I appreciate you answering those phone calls too whenever I ask for a little bit of your time and your busy schedule. So thank you for that, and always a pleasure to jump on and talk some ball with you, man.
Anytime, my man. Thank you.